Good kill, good kill. Hey, good kill.
Hey guys, welcome back to another video. We're here in the Strike Eagle once again, and we're going to be doing a bit of a mission here today. There's a submarine that is near Guam, that's American territorial waters. We've got this bandit locked up here. It's having some issues, possibly damage of some kind. We're going to go sink it because it's not supposed to be here, and it looks like there's two bandits coming to protect it. So the submarine needs to die, and if these bandits get in the way, they got to die too. So obviously I'm going to treat these bandits as a threat. They are J-10s, which are Chinese fighters. They are carrying the PL-15, a very scary missile, although like in terms of range and all that kind of stuff, it's a very good missile. It lacks in seeker technology when compared to the AMRAAM. So if we, and you know, we'll talk about that in the TAC view. We might have to notch these things because we're going to be well inside the MAR. Trying to shoot AMRAAMs at them. Currently got him at 60 miles. Now, as I kind of alluded to earlier, the PL-15 has a longer range than the AMRAAM Charlie-5 that we're using here today. Therefore, when we shoot these missiles, we're going to have to defend, and then we're going to have to notch as they get closer. I got him at 51 miles. Let's just send a couple Fox 2s just for fun. Let's send it right here because the F-15 is saying I can. So Fox 3 away and coolie up to step to the next bandit. Fox 3 for him as well. And so those two might just send them defensive if they fall for it. They're not going to be a threat really, even though the F-15 is saying that it is. I'm going to send them another one here. These ones are intended to kill. At 37 miles, Fox 3. Step to the next bandit, Fox 3 at 35 miles. Okay, so we will immediately start reducing altitude, and we're going to put the bandits on the gimbal limit of the radar. I will discuss this part in TAC view. You just drag them to one side of your radar screen. We're deploying countermeasures at 25 miles now. Continuing to drag their missiles into denser air as we reduce altitude, and offset to the gimbal limit to drag the missiles as well. We're inside the MAR, so we're not going to turn cold and run. We're going to hit the notch. Okay, those are missiles going pitbull. Hold the notch. Hold the notch. Continuing to deploy countermeasures. And there you go, RWR's clean. So we've defeated those missiles. Okay, according to RWR, one of these guys is still alive. So we're going to go ahead and point the nose over there and see if we can find him. Got him on radar here. Locked. At 15 miles, you can see his buddy dead up high. falling to the ground. Fox 3 at 13 miles. And Fox 3 will double tap this guy. Yeah, he fired. Okay, back into the beam. Again, we can't turn cold because we're inside the MAR. So we're going to beam it and drop chaff. And look for impact, which I don't see. Although you hear the RWR is quiet. Eerily quiet. Which means we defeated that missile. So we're going to go ahead and recommit. See if we can find him again. Looks like he's still alive out there. Got him on radar. Fox 3. Fox 3. Okay, it came off. And once again, beam and chaff. And I'm all out of chaff. I'm out of chaff and flare. Oh, there we go. Impact. We got him. Splash 2 J-10s. Now to go find that submarine. Should be behind one of these islands here. That's quite the battle, actually. Dodged a bunch of PL-15s there. Alright, so waypoint 2, I'm going to build a high-resolution map of the island over there. See if the submarine's back there. While it does that, 4, 3, 2, 1. There it is. Oh, there's the island. There's something in the water here. You see this? Look at that. Okay. Let's go ahead and... That's the island right in front, too. Let's go ahead and... what are we going to do? Okay, let's set up the armament. Right here. Armament. And then we're going to click air to ground. And GBU 24, we're going to set that to auto step and a nose tail fuse. And we're going to go menu, T-pod, menu, T-pod, and slave that to waypoint 2. And look at that, you can see something right in the water, right to the edge of that island. Obstructed by clouds. Stand by. It's right here. It's this island right in front of me. I can see the smoke visually from here. Let's go ahead and line it up. Back to waypoint 2. There it is. Okay. Look at that. It's got some smoke coming out of the back end of them. Just sitting in the water there, waiting for a rescue. Definitely not supposed to be here. So he's gonna die. Gonna hit him with a 2,000-pound Paveway 3. I hope the crew has come ashore onto that island there. And pickle. And we'll continue to laze all the way in. And that should be making impact any second now. Hit. Okay, that guy was giving off kind of a white grayish smoke earlier. And you can see a big fire coming out of him now and lots of black smoke, so that thing definitely penetrated. There's a massive fire on board now. So pretty safe to say that thing is dead in the water. Okay, let's head home. Okay, guys, so having a look at the TAC view portion of this little fight here. We have me and the Strike Eagle. We have a Patriot site here at Anderson Air Force Base, so worst case scenario, I could have fallen back to that. We have our 2 J-10s protecting the Chinese submarine here. And at about 40 miles, we fired the first 2 AMRAAMs, which, you know, were honestly experimental. I didn't think they would hit, but the F-15 told me to shoot, so I shot anyway. Hit him with 2 more a couple miles later at 39 and 35 mile launches here. And so talking about the defensive maneuver here to defeat the Chinese PL-15s, we're gonna rewind a little bit. So basically what happens here is we push the bandits into the gimbal limit of our radar as we defend here. First thing you'll notice is that we're diving. We're diving into denser air. This creates more drag and friction on the missile. I guess one of the major components to talk about here is that missiles have a finite fuel. Typically a Fox 3 will have anywhere between 7 to 12 seconds of burn in the missile, the fuel. Once that fuel is depleted, that missile now has to use its own kinetic energy to hit the target. That's all it's ever going to have. And now it's your job to defeat and to bleed that missile's kinetic energy. Bleed that missile's energy so that you can survive. It can't hit you. Every time, the way you do that is by forcing the missile to turn. Every time you force the missile to turn, it bleeds energy. Okay, like this is the missile turning to hit you. Every time it does one of these, it bleeds energy. So basically that's why we dive down, because now that the missile has its own finite kinetic energy and it's bleeding that every second, we're going to drag it into denser air, which will increase drag, which will increase friction on that missile. We also have turned. We've set an offset here, and the offset, as you can see, if this was the straight line, the offset is something like this. Okay, whatever degrees your radar allows. Again, it's the gimbal limit. We'll talk about that. But again, the idea there is that you're forcing the missile to pull lead to try to hit you, and this turn is bleeding the missile's energy, as well as the fact that it's being, you know, dragged down into denser air. Now, what do we, when we say gimbal limit, how do we know what that is? Imagine this is your MFD in your aircraft. You got your bandit locked right here. This is your bandit. He's in the middle. You locked him up. Okay. Then you offset, you do this. The bandit gets dragged to either left or right, doesn't matter. It's your choice which side you want to crank to. The bandit ends up here at the edge of your radar screen. This is the gimbal limit of your radar. Okay. And so what is that? Imagine this is the nose of your aircraft. This is your cockpit. This is your nose cone. Inside of your nose cone, you have a radar dish. You'll have to excuse my drawing here. I know I'm no Da Vinci. So that's your radar dish. And let's say your bandit is over here. Your radar dish, this is a gimbal. It's like a joint, let's say. This missile turns this way, or sorry, the radar is capable of turning this way and this way. Only a certain amount, right? Maybe 145 degrees is your total gimbal. When you have a bandit over here and you have your radar dish looking over here, so let's say it's like this, it's looking at this bandit, and it's all the way to the edge of its gimbal capability. This is called the gimbal limit. Okay, that's what that is. So now we have to talk about the MAR. Okay, so the MAR is the MAR, the minimum abort range. Okay, I'm writing with a mouse, so again, I apologize. We have the MAR is, let's say this is a separation between the bandits here. Let's say this is X, okay, whatever range that is, because the MAR changes based on altitude, right? It's basically the turn, the distance you need to abort so that you don't get hit by the missile, so that you can run away. It's basically, you know, an escape zone. It's if this is the MAR and I'm on the edge of it and he shoots a missile, I can turn and I can run and the missile will not hit me. Okay. However, if the MAR is like this, let's call that Y. Okay. And I am inside the MAR by a factor of I don't know, Z. Okay. I'm this far inside the MAR. When he shoots that missile, I will not be able to turn and run. When I try to turn and run, that missile will have enough energy to hit me. Okay. At this point, the only way to defeat this missile, again, you cannot turn and run. Your only option is to decoy that missile. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to hit a notch or a beam in order to defeat that missile. Now, we have to talk about the notch and the beam. You see these very complicated concepts here. I'm not going to go too deep into it. There's some research you can do yourself. I don't want to talk for 35 minutes here. But basically the notch is, and the beam is when you, and I'll differentiate between the two in a second here. When you go 90 degrees to the incoming missile or aircraft radar, what that does, it's kind of like a Doppler shift thing. The Doppler radar is looking for movement towards or away from itself. So when you go perpendicular, there's no movement away or towards itself. Some people get confused by this concept and they go, well, the ground is you're still moving closer to the bandit yourself. No, because the ground is also moving closer to you. It's about relative movement. Okay, the bandit is now a part of the ground clutter, essentially. And so you can't tell the difference because the bandit relative to you is not moving towards or away from you. So they fall off radar. This also works for the missile radar. The radar inside the missile makes it difficult for it to see you. Okay, perpendicular to the bandit. Now the difference here between the notch and the beam, the notch requires ground clutter. Okay, so let's switch over to the radar here. When you defend down, let me defend a little. Okay, so when you imagine you're the radar in the missile, you're looking down at the target. And let's pretend he's already in the notch. I'm not here, but let's just say I was. You see, and there's no relative movement away or towards me. He now blends in perfectly with the ground as I look down, right? I'm not going to be able to see him. Now he's invisible to me. But if he was up here, if he was above my radar, this is him below my radar. If he's above my radar or co-altitude with me, I can look at him against the blue sky. It makes it much easier to see. So this is the notch. In the notch, you need ground clutter. In the beam, you need chaff. Because he can see you, you need to confuse him with a chaff cloud, which makes it much more difficult for him to differentiate which one of these he needs to hit. Okay, so now taking all of those concepts and applying them to what we're doing here. What we're doing, we've dragged the missile down into denser air. We've offset gimbal limit to continue to provide guidance for our own missiles as we defend. We crank the offset, and then once we establish that we're gone all the way down, there's no more room to dive, what we're going to do is turn perpendicular to the missiles into the notch. Oh, and by the way, this is one thing I was going to say. Back when we were talking about, looking at the bandit above the blue sky and below, a good example of that is the Gulf of Sidra 1989 incident, where the Tomcats positioned themselves below the Libyan MiG-23s so that they didn't have to pick them out of ground clutter. They could look at them against the blue sky, right? So that's a good indicator of how that was, applied in real life. So back to this. So you see the missiles are now coming, and I don't try to turn and run because we're inside the MAR. The PL-15 has a massive MAR compared to the AMRAAM. I had to get into the MAR to shoot my own missiles, but so now I'm in it, and so there's no running. I don't run, I just decoy the missile. By hitting the notch, the missiles miss and they hit the water. I recommit. Two of my AMRAAMs hit this guy up here, so that J-10 dies up high. Second guy survives my two AMRAAMs, recommits, shoots a Fox 3, another PL-15 at me. I shoot at him, I double tap him, and you can see that his missile hits the water because, again, I notch it, right? I'm not even trying to run from this guy's missiles. There's no point. And luckily, one of those actually hits him. One of those double taps hits him. I think it was the first one. But I shoot a second one because he was still on radar. It takes a second for him to hit the water, so radar was still giving me a return, so I shot the other one. That hits the water, and that's it. That's the engagement. Okay, guys, so that pretty much sums it up, how that BVR engagement went down against the two J-10s. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.